Given all that you witnessed in the Capitol on that day, this is a pretty straightforward question, a yes or a no. Do you believe that Donald Trump should ever be president again?
David, I think that's up to the American people. But I think we'll have better choices in the future.
Former Vice President Mike Pence is still too afraid to speak out too aggressively against former President Donald Trump, but it is clear that the former VP is not a fan of Trump's. In fact, he makes that clear in this next clip. Let's watch.
The people of this country actually get along pretty well once you get out of politics. And I think they want to see their national leaders start to reflect that same compassion and generosity of spirit. And I think so in the days ahead, I think there will be better choices.
Better choices than Donald Trump. Will you run for president in 2024?
Well, we're giving it consideration in our House. Prayerful consideration.
Do you believe you can beat Donald Trump?
Well, that would be for others to say. And it'd be for us to decide whether or not we'd want to test that.
So if you decide to run and he's up there, so be it.
Man, the unearned confidence of mediocre individuals like Mike Pence never ceases to amaze me. So he is definitely considering a run in 2024, which I honestly didn't believe until I watched that video.
Yeah, no.
Like, what do you have going for you, bro? Really, think about it.
So we have another story in the show today about how Republicans might realize, at least some of them belatedly, like, oh, we might live in our own bubble. And the reality is, as we've talked about 1,000 times on this show, everybody lives in their own bubble. And so we're not immune from it, and that's why we're always wondering and checking ourselves and double checking, saying, hey, is this true? Or is it because we live in a certain echo chamber, right? And so in the case of Mike Pence, he lives in his own bubble where he was part of the reason why Donald Trump won in 2016. Now the reality is that's not true at all. No. He was totally irrelevant. In fact, he was picked to be irrelevant. If you remember, Donald Trump had a couple of strong, big personalities he could have chosen from, but he chose to pick the meek, useless Mike Pence so that he wouldn't outshine Trump, okay? So, but Pence lives in a world where he thinks, oh, I was pivotal, and that he's strong and he stood up to Trump. And he did, to be fair to him, on January 6th, he did stand up to him and it made a big difference. But outside of that, no, he's back to being the same meek guy who has no chance at all. I mean, listen to his answers. If you're gonna run and win for the presidency of the United States, unless you're backed up by the giant corporate machine, like a guy like Joe Biden is, right? And all the media has your back and all of the politicians have your back, et cetera. If you're not in that seat, then you gotta come super strong. And here's what's not super strong. Oh, I don't know, that's for others to decide. We're giving it prayerful thought, okay? No, if you're gonna run and win, you say, goddamn right I'm winning, and if Trump's in the race, then I'm gonna beat him. That's how you win. You don't do it with, oh, I don't know, maybe others can decide. Yeah, Mike, we know you don't do all the voting. Other people decide, but you're supposed to make a case for yourself, and this ain't it.
Yeah, and I can't help but notice how he wants to strike this conciliatory tone, this need to kind of bring the country together, be unified. And it's like, where were you at when the president, when you were vice president and the president of the United States was intentionally dividing the country, using divisive issues to further sow hatred among the electorate? I mean, where were you? Where were you? Because he was all on board for that. And if he wasn't, he was too afraid to say something.
Too afraid.
Right.
Again, give him credit, on January 6th, he did not go along with the fake elector plot that was an attempted coup on America. Yes, it's the lowest bar in history, literally, okay? But he did clear it. So you give him credit for that. But outside of that, he has been, his entire career is defined by missing in action.
Now, I do want to go to Fox News's political analyst, top political analyst, and that's Brit Hume, who has some commentary in regard to Donald Trump and his fading star. Let's watch.
While he maintains real influence within the Republican Party, no two ways about that. but it has begun to fade. It started fading, really, I think, after his annex post-election in 2020. That a great many people who were with him, perhaps up until then, began to move away from him. And he never has really done anything to change that. He's continued to insist that the election was stolen from him, that he should be the real president, and so on, so forth. And if you look at these election results, candidates who followed that line, who agreed with him about that, did not fare particularly well. They didn't all lose, but a lot of them did lose, and a lot of them lost in races that they could have won. So I think that both in terms of opinion and in terms of influence, his star has faded.
So I'm really curious to see how this plays out, because while you see an increasing number of Republican politicians, certainly the Republican or conservative media kind of stack up against Donald Trump following the underperforming Republicans in the midterms, I don't know if that's necessarily how Republican voters are feeling, right?
We don't know that at all yet.
Yeah, and there hasn't really been much attention paid to that, right? So I see Democrats celebrating because they think we got this, right? Everyone's turning on Trump. We don't have to worry about him anymore. No, but all we're hearing from, or the only people we're hearing from, are power players, politicians, members of the media. They don't represent the electorate. There could be a huge disconnect between the media and Republican politicians and where the Republican voters are at in terms of Donald Trump.
100%. In fact, we already see it. Why? Because we're actually out in the field, unlike all these people, and we are actually honest, unlike all these people. So when Michael Schur went down to Florida for us and asked Republicans at a rally, Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, every single one of them said Donald Trump, okay, in Florida. So nobody's voted at all yet. So what you're hearing is not just the politicians, but the right-wing media, and that is critical. So Murdoch has 100% turned on Donald Trump. There's a story out today that, in fact, he told Trump, he called him and let him know that, I don't know if it was a call, but he clearly communicated to him, we're done with you, we're moving on, and if you run, we're gonna turn all of our guns against you. And to the point where if you win the GOP nomination, we might even back a Democrat.
What?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a story out today. No, so now.
And by the way, Rupert Murdoch never liked Trump, right? But he wasn't willing to go to war first time around. I mean, that's an interesting threat, to say the least.
So are they going to actually support a Democrat? No way. Because you read more into that story, you see Murdoch saying, well, I mean, it couldn't be Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. So it would have to be somebody more right-wing than Joe Biden. I mean, who are they gonna run? Right, Henry Cuellar or something? Maybe. Like, no, and are the Democrats gonna agree to run Liz Cheney? I mean, we would all tackle them. Yeah, they might love that. And
yeah,
I mean,
100%.
Murdoch and Pelosi are a perfect match, right? So I know in Washington, they're like, oh, that's crazy, that's not true at all. Show me one economic policy where they actually disagree, right? Don't show me fake votes from Nancy Pelosi. Show me her actions trying to get a bill passed that Murdoch wouldn't agree with. You can't find it. Anyways, it's because it's part of corporate rule. But to me, the more interesting part of the Murdoch story, because we already knew that Wall Street Journal and New York Post had turned on Donald Trump. They were doing one op-ed and cover story after another against Trump. We already knew that they were backing DeSantis. It was an amusing part of the story is they say the Fox News hosts, on the other hand, will be harder to control. They're very independent thinking. I'm like, no, they're not. First of all, their entire news division takes their orders from Murdoch, period, and they will do whatever propaganda is ordered. Second of all, other than Tucker Carlson and Hannity only because he's really good friends with Trump, but even so, he's got a $40 million salary. When Murdoch says heal, they will heal. And Tucker might not do it because he has his own political ambitions, but that's a different story. No, the entire empire will turn on Trump. Murdoch does run it, which leads to the final point. Guys, look at this. Do you think Fox News is doing news? Do you think Wall Street Journal and New York Post are doing news? When Murdoch openly, brazenly is saying, we will back this candidate instead of that candidate, and we will twist all of the news to make it appear as if this guy is popular and this guy is unpopular. This guy is good and that guy is bad. He's telling you, I control the so-called news.
I mean,
it doesn't get any clearer than that.
He certainly has the ability to put his thumb on the scale, and we've seen that through how many election cycles at this point? So I think that threat is a legitimate one. I don't know how much of an impact it has on the Republican electorate, to be honest with you.
Well, so that it does, and so somebody came up with a drinking game, one of our members did, for every point I make after I say final point. Okay, yeah. And they're right about that. But since you brought that up, so that's who shapes the mind of the right wing. They didn't.
I know,
Trump didn't pop into their head out of nowhere. Right wing media backed him 1,000%.
Okay, sure, that's true. But remember how Republican voters turned on Fox News when Fox News wasn't leaning into the big lie enough.
Yeah, and so that's why for Wall Street Journal and New York Post, they don't care about MAGA. Their revenue is not at all affected by MAGA. But for Fox News, it is. It's directly related to them. So that's why it's more of an interesting balancing act. And Murdoch does not control it as much as he wants to, because if he takes a completely wrong turn, the ratings will dive and he'll start to lose revenue and he'll start to panic. That's why it's Game of Thrones. This is a real fight within the Republican Party, more so than any fight I've ever seen in my life in politics. Most of the fights in politics are fake. They both agree to the corporate agenda, and they're having a fake fight for window dressing in theater. This is a real fight between Trump and the Murdoch wing, and I have no idea who's going to win.